Greetings, I'm Professor K, and in this short video presentation, we're going to be doing a short video tutorial on how we go about completing the Week 2 lab for ISSC 421, and the lab is configuring a pfSense firewall on the client. And for this demonstration, I'm going to have to go through Section 1, hands-on demonstration, as well as Section 2, applied learning. And so let's go ahead and get started with Part 1 of Section 1, the hands-on demonstration. Step 1. On your local computer, create the lab report file. On the workstation desktop, drag the pfSense-fw-planner file to the file transfer folder to download the file to your local machine. It's real simple. Just grab it, drag it on down here to the file transfer. It's going to pop up and give you the option to either open it or to save it. Go ahead and save it to your local machine. I saved mine to my documents folder. You can save yours wherever you want. Just remember where you saved it. You will use this spreadsheet on your local computer to document the desired configuration for the firewall you will configure in Part 2 of this lab. For this section of the lab, the configuration details will be provided for you. On your local computer, open the pfSense-fw-planner file. I have mine open down here. Let's go ahead and open it. Now you will have to enable editing. You're going to see a yellow bar going across the top of the page. If you want to type into this Excel spreadsheet, you will have to enable editing. The first item on the physical configuration worksheet is hostname. A hostname is the unique name of the computer on the network, capable of originating or responding to an interaction using the Internet Protocol. In the settings column on the hostname row, type your name. Now, it doesn't mean to type your name literally. You will type in your given name. I'm going to go ahead and bring up my Excel spreadsheet here, and we'll go into the physical configuration portion of this item. And here we're going to type in the host name that I'm going to use for this configuration. I'm going to type in C. Cranebill. In the comments column of the host name row, type today's date to record the date the configuration was recorded. I'm going to type in 9/17/2021. In the settings column of the domain row, type local to indicate that this is the local firewall. Here's the item domain. Go over here to the settings column, type in local. In the comments column of the next two fields, primary DNS server and secondary DNS server, type override DNS. Over here in the comments field for primary DNS, I will type in override DNS, and I will copy that, and I will paste it into the secondary DNS comment field. In the settings column of the time server URL, type, I'll go ahead and talk while I type here, 0.pfSense.pool.ntp.org. In the settings column of the time zone row, type UTC to document the use of universal coordinated time. So back on over here on our physical configuration, I'm going to type in UTC. Step number 9. In the settings columns of the Wan Interface row, type static. Back on over here on our worksheet, I will type in static next to Wan Interface. In the comments column of the Wan Interface, type the following IP address: 10.20.1.1/24. In step number 11, in the settings column of the MAC address row, leave the cell blank. And it tells you that in this lab environment, there's no interface that will require a MAC address. If required by your network configuration, you would type the source MAC address in the settings column. Step number 12. In the settings column of the MTU, maximum transmission unit, row, type default to accept the default value assigned by the firewall wizard. In the settings column of the IP address row, you're going to type 10.20.1.1. Let's go ahead and do that real quick. Now we're going to type IP version 4 in the comment column. In the settings column of the subnet mask row, type '24 and explains why this is needed. Excel requires the apostrophe to properly format the 24 entry as a character and not a formula. The 24 entry indicates the classless interdomain routing CIDR domain mask. So I'll put the apostrophe and I'll type in 24. Now normally if I was going to annotate this as a subnet, I could also do it as 255.255.255.0. Step number 16. In the comments column of the upstream gateway row, type not required. Make no changes to the DHCP hostname now, since the network is configured for a static connection. Step number 18. Make no changes to the rows related to point-to-point protocol over Ethernet. Step number 19. Make no changes to the rows related to point-to-point tunneling protocol. 20. In the settings column of the block RFC 1918 networks row, type do not block. On our worksheet, that is item number 28. So over here in the comments, I will type in do not block. In the settings column of the block Bogan networks, type do not block. Step number 22. Make no changes to the LAN IP address and subnet mask rows. The pfSense Firewall Setup Wizard will automatically populate these fields. Step number 23. In the settings column of the admin password, you're going to type in a new password. Capital P, ampersand, lowercase ss, 9999. From the bottom of the pfSense FW Planner worksheet, click the Firewall Rules tab and open the Firewall Rules worksheet. Step number 25. Compare the headings in the Firewall Rules worksheet with the following table. Each field in the worksheet is described in this table. You will need this information to complete the Firewall Rules configuration. So get familiar with this table so that you understand exactly what each one of these columns and rows does. Moving on to step 26. In column R of the Firewall Rules worksheet, type Internet Browsing. Let's go all the way over here and make sure that we have in column R, Internet Browsing. Let's scroll all the way back over to the left. And in step number 27, in column A of the Firewall Rules worksheet, type Pass. That will allow the Internet traffic. Step 28, in column C, type LAN. Step number 29, in column D, type IP version 4. In column E, type TCP. In column G, type any. In column L, type any. In column O and P, type HTTP. Scroll over just a little bit. Step number 34. Repeat steps 27 through 33 to create the following rule descriptions. Allow email to and from anyone and specify the port range as the one used by Simple Mail Transfer Protocol. Also allow another rule that will allow file transfer protocol so that users can send files back and forth. For rule number 3, we are to allow the domain name service, DNS, so that users can type a URL instead of requiring them to know the specific IP address of any website they wish to visit. And finally, for rule number 4, we're going to allow Internet Control Message Protocol, ICMP, so that they can ping to do diagnostics or troubleshoot as needed. So let's start off with SMTP. For the action, we're going to pass. We'll be using the Lan Interface. We'll be using IP version 4. Protocol will remain TCP. And we'll do an any. And that's going to go into column G and column L. Scroll over a little bit. Now the protocol for this one is going to be SMTP. And we're going to have email access. Scroll on back over. Now we're going to do another one for FTP. Again, we're going to be using the LAN interface. Again, we'll be using IP version 4. And for this protocol, we will also be using TCP. And again, we'll be using any. for columns G and L. Scroll on over. This is going to be FTP, and we're going to be doing file transfer protocol. The next one is to allow DNS. Scroll on back over. Again, let's do another pass. Lan Interface, IP version 4. Protocol will be TCP. Type will be any. And then again, for column L, any, we'll type in DNS. And we'll type in DNS. Finally, we have ICMP. Again, we'll do a pass. Again, we'll be using the Lan Interface, IP version 4. Protocol is going to be ICMP. Any for columns G and L. For the port range, we'll type in ICMP, and again ICMP, and we'll make a comment for ICMP. And so that concludes part 1 of section 1, the hands-on demonstration. We're now going to move on to part 2. We're now going to apply those configuration changes that we put into the worksheet to the pfSense firewall. Scroll on down here to step number 1. On the workstation desktop, double-click the Connections folder. Step number 2, in the Connections folder, double-click the pfSense shortcut. Step number 3, maximize the browser window. Step number 4, in the PFC login screen, double-click the username box to produce a prompt showing the last username used in the application. Go ahead and select admin. Notice that the password fills in automatically. From the username prompt, click the admin option to accept the username and populate the password box. Done. At the pfSense login screen, click Login. Step number 7. From the pfSense menu bar, click System and select Setup Wizard. You find the menu bar right up here. Scroll on down till we come to System. From the context menu, I will click on Setup Wizard. Click the Next button. And on the next screen, click the Next button one more time. On the General Information page, you will use the information that we put into the column of the Physical Configuration Worksheet to complete the fields on the pfSense Firewall Setup Wizard. Let's go ahead and bring that back up real quick. Let's go to the Physical Configuration, and this is where we're going to get all the information we need to configure the firewall. Step number 9, in the hostname box, type your name. So I'm going to go ahead and type in that username I want to use for this machine. For step number 10, in the domain box, type local. Step number 11, confirm the override DNS checkbox is checked to match the worksheet entry, and then click Next to continue. Now to get to this, you're just going to have to scroll down just a little bit, confirm that the override DNS box is checked, and then click Next. Step number 12, continue to configure the firewall using the entries you made in the worksheet during part 1 of the lab, and click Next when prompted until you reach the Configure Lan Interface page. Some of the entries in the Setup Wizard requires you to type in the values from the worksheet into a text box, while others will require that that entry be selected from a drop-down list. So we're on the time server information, and from the window I'm going to select the first option that I have here that makes sense, which is number 2. I'm going to confirm that is correct by looking at my spreadsheet here, and it is. For the time zone, let's pull down the window and let's select UTC. Click Next. We next need to configure the WAN interface. On line 8 of our worksheet, underneath Physical Configuration for the WAN interface, we're going to have a static configuration using the IP address of 10.20.1.1 with a 24-bit subnet mask. We don't need to configure the MAC address right now, nor do we need to configure the MTU or the MSS, and we can confirm that by looking at the information that we have for our MTU and our MSS on our worksheet. So according to our worksheet, we're not going to modify the MTU or the MSS. Scroll on down. Here we have the IP address and our IP address is 10.20.1.1. Subnet mask is 24. The upstream gateway, we don't have one. DHCP hostname, none is required. PPPoE configuration, none is required. Point-to-point transfer protocol configuration, none is required. Now we come on down here to the RFC 1918 networks. Let's see what our worksheet says. Do not block. So we leave this box unchecked. What about block Bogan networks? Let's go ahead and check our worksheet. Bogan networks do not block. So we got to uncheck this box right here. Once you have everything in there correctly, go ahead and click next. We're now ready to move on with configuring the LAN interface. So let's look at our worksheet here. The LAN IP is none. So that means we're going to be picking up DHCP. Step number 15. At the Configure the LAN Interface page, click Next to accept the default entries and proceed to the Set Admin Web GUI Password page. Step number 16. On the Set Admin Web GUI Password page, type the new password as it is shown. Capital P, ampersand, SS 9999. Now, you can go ahead and show the password over here to make sure that you're doing it correctly. Capital P, ampersand, lowercase ss, 9999. Type that in one more time down here. Ampersand, ss, 9999. Go ahead and look over the password one more time. And I'm missing a 9. If you fat fingered the password during this step, you will have to do the lab from the beginning. So make sure you check yourself. Go ahead and click Next when you're ready. Step number 18. When prompted by the pfSense Firewall Setup Wizard, click Reload to save the changes to the pfSense Firewall. Step number 19. From the pfSense menu bar, click Firewall and select Rules to configure the firewall with the rules you defined in Part 1 of this lab. I've clicked on Firewall. Let's go on down to Rules. Step number 20. At the Firewall Rules WAN page, click the LAN link to begin adding the new rules that you configured in Part 1 of this lab. Here's the LAN. Let's open that up. Number 21. On the Rules table, click the default IP version 6 any rule and the default allow LAN to any rule checkboxes, and click the red delete button at the bottom of the table. So we're going to delete this rule here, number 2, and we're going to delete the IP version 6 rule. Notice that you cannot delete the anti-lockout rule. When you have both those boxes checked, go ahead and press the delete button. Go ahead and confirm. Step number 23, when prompted, click the Apply Change buttons to apply the changes that you just made to the rules. Step number 24. Below the Firewall Rules table, click the green Add button to add a new rule. But before you do that, read the next paragraph. There are 2 Add buttons, one with an up arrow that will add the new rule at the top of the table, and one with a down arrow that will add the new rule to the bottom of the table. Since the order of the rules dictates how the firewall will implement the rules, you will choose the second Add button with the down arrow. So make sure you choose the right green down arrow button. Step number 24. Below the Firewall Rules table, click the green Add button. Now you got to click on the right green Add button. There are 2. If you click on the one with the up arrow, then the rule that you're going to create will take precedence over any other rule. But we're going to use the one with the green down arrow. So we're going to click the green Add button with the down arrow. Do that first. And now we're going to create a rule for HTTP. Use the entries in the Firewall Rules worksheet of the pfSense Firewall Planner worksheet to create the HTTP rule. So the action is passed. Don't worry about disabling it. Now the interface for all these rules is going to be the LAN interface. It's going to be IP version 4. The protocol will be TCP. Source is any. Destination is any. The port range will be HTTP port 80. So let's pull down the list, and from the window we're going to select HTTP port 80. Notice that it fills in both of those windows for us, from and to. Scroll on down. Under extra options, where it says description, you're going to put in internet browsing. Go ahead and click save. You now have a new rule, but it will not take effect until we click where it says apply changes. Click apply changes. Step number 27. Repeat steps 24 through 26 for the remaining rules on the Firewall Rules worksheet. Again, let's click on the green button with the down arrow to add another firewall rule. Action will be pass, interface will be LAN, address family will be IP version 4, protocol will be TCP, the source will be any, the destination will be any, and let's go ahead and bring up our worksheet to see which one is next. And this is going to be SMTP. Go ahead and pull down the destination port range. Scroll on down till you come to SMTP port 25. And notice that it fills it in for both of the windows from and to. Scroll on down, come to extra options. Just type in the description. Scroll on down. Underneath extra options in the description, type in SMTP mail. Go ahead and save. Apply changes. Next rule. Scroll on down. Click on the green add button with the down arrow. And we're now going to do FTP. Again, the action remains the same. Pass. Lan Interface, IP version 4. Protocol remains TCP. Source is any. The destination port range, pull down the window, and from here you're going to select FTP, port 21. Make sure it's in both windows. Scroll on down. In the description, file transfer will work just fine. Click the Save button, and on the next screen, just press Apply Changes. Scroll on down and make sure you got your new rule in place. Our next rule will be for DNS. Once again, let's click on that down arrow for the green Add button. Again, everything applies. LAN, IP version 4, protocol TCP, source any, destination any. For destination port range, you're going to pull down the window and you're going to select DNS using port 53. Scroll on down. In the description, just type in DNS. Click Save. On the next screen, press the Apply Change button. The last rule we have to deal with is to allow ICMP, and that's going to be using the protocol ICMP. Again, we're going to scroll on down, find that Add button with the down arrow. Leave everything as it is. Scroll on down, scroll on down. For the protocol, we're going to select ICMP. ICMP type is any. Source is any. Destination is any. Description, allow ICMP. Scroll on down, find the Save button. On the next screen, click the Apply Changes, and we are done. Now, for step number 28, make a screenshot showing your completed rules table and paste it into your lab report. Step number 29, we've already clicked the Apply Change button for each one of the new rules we have created. So for step 30, close the pfSense window. And that's going to complete section 1, hands-on demonstration for this lab. In our second video for lab 03, we're going to take a look at doing section 2, applied learning. See you in the next video.